I mean, I was told by my film professor, there are films and there are movies. And sometimes you've got to know what you're walking into.
Yeah. See, but I come from a time when movies were films.
Dune Part 2 is finally here. It's been a very long wait for me. I've been very excited for Dune Part 2. I saw Dune Part 1 in IMAX back in 2021, absolutely loved it, and I've been just impatiently waiting to tap back into Arrakis. I needed more Dune in my blood. Dune Part 2 released on March 1st and is directed by the masterful, wonderful Denis Villeneuve. Written by Denis Villeneuve and John Spades, adapted by Frank Miller's sci-fi masterpiece Dune. Cinematography is done here by the GOAT himself, Greg Fraser, and composed by another GOAT, Hans Zimmer, who delivered in spades for this score. Before I even dive into the movie itself, in the first movie, the score was really good. Coming into a sequel, I thought that he would just be reusing a lot of the older score, but Hans Zimmer cooked here as he always does, and I'm very pleased with that. What is Dune Part 2 exactly about? Let's say you've been living under a rock and just have no idea what this massive sci-fi franchise is actually about. Embark on the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he reunites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the known universe, Paul endeavors to prevent a terrible future only he can foresee. Now, just how excited was I for Dune Part 2? I was really excited. This was really my most anticipated film of the 2020s so far. More excited for this film than The Batman, even more than Oppenheimer. I just wanted to tap back into Dune after seeing Dune Part 1. And leading up into this film, I wasn't really sure how good it was going to be before any kind of premiere. I had high hopes for it. I knew it was going to be better. It's hard to make Dune Part 2 not better than Dune Part 1. No offense to Dune Part 1, but it is slower, a little bit more sluggish. This film, complete opposite. But going into this movie, I didn't really have too high of hopes. I knew it would be good, at least a 4.5 out of 5, a solid flick. But then, of course, the premiere started happening, early screenings for fans and just critics alike started happening, and just there was a massive uproar of praise for this movie. 5 stars being thrown out like it's no one's business, a 97 or 98 on Rotten Tomatoes, 10 out of 10 on IMDb. I was really just confused on that. This movie can't be that good. There's no shot that this movie is truly as good as people say it is. So going into Dune Part 2, I took a very interesting approach that I haven't done with any other film before this. I decided to gaslight myself into thinking Dune Part 2 won't be that good. I did this because I wanted to just really calm my nerves. The last time I was this hyped for a film was back when Spider-Man No Way Home, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame were coming out, and my heart rate was really steady at like 155 million beats per second, because when I get excited for a film, I get really excited for a film. So, gaslighting myself into thinking there's no way this film is that good, people are overreacting. That was able to kind of soothe my nerves going into that IMAX screening. So as I sat down for Dune Part 2, my heart rate was really calmed down a bit. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it would be good, but I just kind of kept my expectations to a minimum for my own sake. Well, how much did I love Dune Part 2? Is Dune Part 2 that good? And the answer is a resounding yes. This is not a hype train kind of movie. The movie is just that good. It is just that perfect. We haven't gotten a movie of this scale and this scope and this quality since films like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Two Towers, or James Cameron Avatar, or even Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. That's just how big this film is. It's not a hype train. It's not a bandwagon. I'm not being paid by Warner Brothers, even though that would be very nice. Warner Brothers, please sponsor me. Regardless if I was being paid or not, this movie really is just that perfect. It's that much of a 5 out of 5 kind of film. In fact, this movie is that much of a 5 out of 5 film that I not only saw it one time on Friday in IMAX, I went back that same weekend on Sunday and saw it in Dolby because it's just that much of an experience to see it not one time, not two, not even three, but maybe 5, 6 times in theaters because it's just that resoundingly impressive. Alright, and just as a little bit of a fair warning when we dive into this movie, This film is really big. Dune Part 2 and the Dune story in general is very dense and very wide, very broad. A lot of things you can dive into here. So I'm not going to be able to dive into this entire film, analyze everything that I possibly can in this little bit of a spoiler-free review for you. But I'm going to tell you what really, really worked and is really, really masterful, and the things that aren't that good, but I can kind of debunk my own critiques for this movie when I talk about it a little bit more. Now, what's the first thing that works really good for this film? Really one of the most important things for any movie, the pacing and the runtime of this film. Now, once again, I saw this film twice, once in IMAX and once in Dolby, and both times I saw the movie, it feels like it's an hour and a half or an hour long. It's just that good at really hooking the audience in and telling an engaging story that's really dense and really wide, but doing it in a way that's entertaining. Doesn't feel like a chore, doesn't feel like it's just really too much. It feels just very necessary. As soon as the film ends, I can really feel like I can go for another 2.5, 3 hours because this film is just that entertaining. The characters that interesting. It makes this film a real treat to watch instead of like an actual chore. And there's some films out there, some that are longer than Dune, some that are shorter than Dune, that really just are kind of dragging at times and really overstaying their welcome. I won't say any names, but they know who they are. They know who I'm talking to them right now. Some films maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they feel like they're like longer than Lawrence of Arabia. It's really impressive, but Dune, not the case whatsoever. This screenplay, really tight, really impressive, really engaging, and I can watch this film like 5 more times, and it will still feel like I'm watching a 20-minute TV show. So pacing and runtime, really, really good, but what's really important, who's behind the camera for this film? A really god-tier, goated trio, Denis Villeneuve, Greg Fraser, and Hans Zimmer. All 3 of those guys working in tandem makes this film truly like a presentation of a generation, of a lifetime that you have to see again and again and again. And we saw with the first film, I love that first Dune film because everything feels so intricate. It really does do a very masterful job with its sound design, with its visuals, all of the visual motifs in the movie. It does a really good job with that. It's a much smaller story, so it can do that at, the expense of not having a really large and grand story, doing things to more of a smaller sense, which isn't that bad of a thing. For other people, that makes it boring. For me, it makes it very analytical and fun. For Dune Part 2, it's a much larger story, like twice or 3 times the size of Dune Part 1. So it's a lot going on, equally as important, equally as intricate with its cinematography and its storytelling. And the score, Hans Zimmer, he did it again. He can't miss. He put out another banger. And there's a lot to really cherry pick from when it comes to the cinematography and the visuals for Dune Part 2, specifically the arena scene, the Harkonnen arena with the black sun over top. Seeing Austin Butler tear kids up is really incredible, extremely well shot. They did that with like an infrared camera. Very good. I really enjoyed that. Also, the Emperor's homeworld, I guess you can call it, that looks very beautiful, very lush, very green. A lot of sunlight really just pouring into the trees. That's really good as well. But I think what really takes the cake of this movie, and very ironic, but Arrakis is just so beautiful. It's just extremely well done. Shooting the desert and making it feel so lush and so grand is truly a massive feat that really people can take for granted. I think it was in the first film and the second film, Chani says that Arrakis is beautiful when the sun is low. That statement is really put on full display here. Every single shot of Arrakis looks really breathtaking. And on that IMAX film, chef's kiss. It's absolutely incredible. And now we run across to the actors in this movie, and this film is really firing in on all cylinders, the visuals, the writing, and also the acting in this movie. Everyone in this film does an incredible job. Every single person does a massively impressive job. No one does a bad performance, from Timothée Chalamet to a random background character. Everyone does an incredible job. But specifically, who were the GOATs of this film? Gotta start out with the GOAT here, Timothée Chalamet. Is it his best performance? In my opinion, probably top 2. I can flip it around a little bit, but Timothée Chalamet is really incredible in this film. He just came out of the gate too hot with Call Me By Your Name, but Dune Part 2, he really goes all out. A new personality just dropped, and it's Paul Wadib Atreides, pardon me. I mean, Timothy does really good. I don't really see anyone else doing this role of Paul Atreides. He really made it his own, kind of pulled things from a ton of different actors, but really made it his performance and did an incredible job for it. There's not a whole lot of, big movies coming out this year, and I know the Oscars may really hate sci-fi films, but I think Timothée Chalamet has a pretty strong chance as lead actor. I can definitely see it happening. I wouldn't argue it whatsoever. Next up, Zendaya, she really has come a very long way, and in this film, she does an incredible job. Chani is really the heart of this story. She's really the character and the human element that you have to this story of Dune. In a very massive world, you need that. She's not exactly the surrogate character that we kind of look through, but she just adds that element that's very much so needed in this film, or else it would just really feel like it's missing that one thing that Zendaya brings to this film. I heard a lot about her going into this film, and she really just is the last piece for this film to really work. That sounds really big and really huge, and it's just absolutely accurate. She does an incredible job. Back in Dune Part 1, if you listen to that episode, my MVP for that film is Oscar Isaac, but I think who gave really the best performance in Dune Part 1, and in this film as well, she might be like number one, honestly. I hate to put her above Timothée Chalamet, but Rebecca Ferguson is really goated in this film. She really does not get the credit she deserves as an actress, and in this film, especially in the role she plays and just the way the movie goes with the plot, it's really important that she gets this character right, and just without really diving into too much spoilers, the transformation of her character and also Timothée Chalamet, it takes a lot of just being an actor, being a great actor, to really pull off that performance, and they do an incredible job. Austin Butler also just came right out of Elvis running and ran into Denis Villeneuve's arms with this role in this movie. He did really good. I'm not gonna lie, he was really fun. I love seeing Elvis on Arrakis, Elvis fighting people in a gladiator pit. It's really fun. It's really cool. This is all just one big Elvis franchise, Elvis multiverse that we're living in, and I'm here for every second of it. Now, that being said, Austin Butler is really good in this film. I absolutely support him and love him, but I think the most egregious take I've seen out of Dune Part 2 is that Austin Butler gave a better performance than Heath Ledger Joker. That's just not the case. I hate to really pull down his performance, but I don't think you can look at Austin Butler and look at Heath Ledger and say, yeah, they're on the same level. It's just not at all a reality and never will be. But he is still really good in this film. One of my favorite parts of the movie, but, he's just not there yet. But respectfully, he did do a great job. And the last quick shout out here goes to Florence Pugh. She did a really good job. There's a lot of good actors in this movie, but Florence Pugh doesn't have that much time in the movie, not that big of a role. Now, I know she'll have a bigger role potentially going into a Dune Messiah movie, and also in the book, I think she has more of a role. But in this film, she does a really good job. She really eats up all of her screen time. When I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, why is Florence Pugh just so big right now and always is just an A-list actor for every single movie? And she proved why in this movie. Did a great job with a little bit of time. That's what we all really want to see. Now, as for the real highlight of this film, and the thing that really stands out and makes it just that good, is its story. And with the first film, once again, a little bit slower, it laid that foundation. The sequel, you hit the ground running, it's just pure fun. No more of the, exposition and fat. There is exposition, obviously, but it's just not a entire film of setup. It's a lot bigger. It's not, as quote-unquote boring. I love that first film, but, hearing people say it's boring kind of annoys me. But if you're one of those people who thinks that Dune Part 1 is just boring and slow, this film is the absolute opposite. There's so much going on, such a broad story. It's really overwhelming. My brain was just trying to really just kind of concentrate on what's happening. There's so much with these characters in this world. My brain couldn't take all of it. It's just that much. This film dives into a lot of religion, messianic figures, and politics, and just the world of Dune. It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. If you listen to our Dune Part 1 episode, I really dived into that whole, Paul Atreides being the potential hero of this story, and really how that's not exactly true, how there's not exactly a hero or villain in the Dune universe. That really was all applied here. I don't want to dive into that. It dives into spoilers, and it is just too much to dive into because there's a lot with the character of Paul Atreides that really gets unpacked in this film. And just of the entire world of Dune, all the Fremen, all the Harkonnens, the Emperor, there's a lot. There's a lot more. It's a lot more than just right and wrong, good and evil, black and white. There's no real sides to the world of Dune. And that just is something that's really deep, and that's the entire film. It's a lot to go through. All right, so I'm sorry. Besides the story, I know that you were promised a war epic, a massive action movie. And yes, that is exactly what this film is. It's incredible. There's no movie that's doing what Dune Part 2 is doing right now. This film is on a completely different level. It just absolutely obliterated what a film means to be 5 stars, because this film is in a league of its own. There's really not much third acts and final battles and even action sequences like the world of Dune. I really didn't think a movie can do what Dune Part 2 has done with its action and its scale and its scope. There's really nothing like this that's been seen before, and it's really impressive. When I was watching it for the first time and seeing that third act unfold on screen, all of those worms attacking, all of those Fremen, Paul Atreides going crazy on everyone, I was saying to myself and to my friend, there's no way this movie is real. And then I rewatched it on Sunday in Dolby with the massive, incredible Dolby Atmos soundtrack that's just absolutely shaking my spinal cord. I was saying to myself, there's no way this movie and this third act is real. There's just no way this is something that they shot and it is unfolding on screen before my eyes. It's just that good. It's just that surreal. When I saw Dune Part 1 and saw Paul's dream, he sees the vision of what is that, that third act of Dune Part 2, that final battle. And that whole time, seeing that sequence of potentially what Dune Part 2 was going to be, it was an absolute pipe dream. When I first saw it, it was a pipe dream. When they announced Dune Part 2 is happening, it was still a pipe dream. When they were filming the movie, they already, everything's official. The world tour is going on. The premiere is going on. That whole time, I thought there's no way this movie can be on that scale and be that big and be that great. And yeah, I was definitely proven wrong, because this film is doing things on a level that we've never really seen before, besides, Lord of the Rings, Avatar, over a decade ago. And this movie's doing it probably better than anything ever before. I'll be honest with you. I remember reading all of the crazy reviews. This is one of the best third acts in decades. Absolutely true. I saw one person say that this film just definitely dethrones Return of the King and Two Towers, and also Empire Strikes Back. People are saying this film is dethroning all of those incredible science fiction epics. And it's safe to say that Dune Part 2 is definitely living up to a lot of those expectations. People are already having just very valid debates that this film is really doing everything better than anything else. I can talk about it for hours, but the action in this movie, if you wanted action, it's here for you, and it's going to be indented, engraved in your brain until the day you die. Now, a question that you may have and that I had with just this movie being really big and not even crossing 3.5 hours is this film going to be able to balance everything? And the answer is yes. This film balances its character, its story, its action absolutely perfectly. The thing that makes the Denis Villeneuve movie so good is that Denis Villeneuve prioritizes its characters and his story more than anything else. Blade Runner 2049 has a decent bit of action, but the action isn't what makes Blade Runner 2049 good. Sicario, an incredible modern-day war movie, and once again, its action isn't its main priority. This movie never feels too big. It never feels like it's over-delivering on action or under-delivering on story. Everything feels perfect. It feels like I'm never getting too much of the other. This movie truly does balance everything out really, really well. And with a lot of just modern day action movies and just, other franchise films, it's not really doing either or that good. But Dune Part 2, the action, absolutely masterful. And the story and the characters, you have Chani and Paul Atreides really being the heart and soul of this movie. That's done just so masterfully. I really want to see the movie again just for that. Not even for the incredible worm fight sequence, just for the characters and those little moments that mean so much. Now that all is great. I love Dune Part 2. It's really incredible. But I have a couple of minor flaws with this movie. The more I start to think about these flaws, the more I kind of realize these aren't exactly flaws with the film. I'll tell you exactly what I mean when I get to them. Number one, this movie really does feel fast, and it's almost 3 hours long, It's really quick. It's not as like slow and intimate like the first film. This movie is very fast when it comes to just like getting things done, moving the plot forward. It's very fast paced. As the movie ended, I really thought to myself, this film can really use an extra 30 to 40 minutes. I know this film is already pushing 3 hours long, but it's really a movie that if I could definitely give any merit to it being 3.5, 4 hours long, it would be this film. And really that all just boils down to, I wanted more of everything when it comes to the world of Dune. I wanted more of every single minute detail about this world and this universe, its characters, its houses, its kingdoms. I wanted to know every single little bit and piece about this world. Now, those two cons, very kind of valid. This movie is very fast and I wanted more of the world. But both of those reasons are really selfish for me, and I'm very wrong about both those cons. Number one, this movie feels very fast. Denis Villeneuve knows this world like the back of his hand. He's definitely read the book multiple times. He's been reading the book since before he even made his first film. Dune is his dream project. It's his baby. This movie and this world is everything that he ever wanted to do as a director and just as a man going through life. So if there's anyone who I can trust to get this world right and understand, how long it should be, it's definitely him. If Denis Villeneuve felt like Dune Part 2 needed to be 3.5, 4.5 hours long, then he would have made it that long of a film, but instead he decided to make it 2 hours and 45 minutes, and that worked pretty well in all honesty. And as for the second thing, I wanted more of this world and more of its characters. The world of Dune is really massive. There's no way that you're going to really be able to get everything condensed into 2.5 hours, 3 hours long. That's why for a very long time, people said that Dune was just unadaptable because it's just too grand. And Denis Villeneuve did a very good job at just defeating all of those allegations about this incredible, incredible book. All right, so with all of that egregious yacht time out of the way, what is my final verdict for Dune Part 2? Should you see it? Should you not see it? My final score for Dune Part 2 is an A+. A 5 out of 5, a 10 out of 10, 100%, whatever rating scale you use, it's maxing out that rating scale. If I could add an extra star on Letterboxd to 6 or maybe 10 out of 5 stars, I definitely would for this movie. Go and see Dune 2 on the biggest screen that you can. I saw Dune in IMAX and Dolby. I just can never really choose anything over IMAX. Go see that film in IMAX the way it was intended to be seen and be blown away. This is definitely one of the best films of the decade, even the century, an absolute masterpiece. After I saw this film, I really realized we're living in the golden age of the theatrical experience. I know that cinema is definitely, as a lot of people say, quote unquote dead, not really creative anymore. This is definitely a sequel and an adaptation, so that really does give merit to those claims. But when it comes to the theatrical experience, we had Dune Part 2, Oppenheimer, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Batman. The list really goes on. From a technical standpoint, we're living in truly the golden age of the theatrical experience. I saw Tenet in IMAX recently, and that film is completely different than seeing it on your couch. And the same goes for Dune Part 2. Do not wait for this film to come on physical media or on streaming services. Go see this film right now, as soon as you possibly can, on the biggest screen possible, because this film is truly a generational level movie, a film that we only get once in a generation, and a film that you'll be telling to your grandchildren generations down the line. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of the Court of Cinema podcast. Dune Part 2 is really just that good. Follow us everywhere on all of our socials, TikTok, Instagram, X, or Twitter, which one you want to say. I don't really care anymore. Stay tuned for later this week. We have everything that I watched in February. It was a pretty stacked month for me. You're not going to want to miss that one. This year and this month is looking a little bit dry for films, but stay right here on the Court of Cinema for everything film and TV. Stay up to date by leaving notifications on so you never really miss an upload, and watch more movies, stay swiped out, and I'm your host Logan, and I'll see you in the movies.